Bulvinaka. This is another episode with the Alpha Torah podcast. I'm here with the Vuetibaus, who I've known for a long time, but I'd like to let them share their names and its origins and its history, so that we can get to know them a little bit more. We'll start with Isi Vuetibau.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Isireli Tupulahi Tawake Vuetibau. I guess we should say a full name because we're talking about names. So, I'm named after my grandfather's brother. So my grandfather is Ratutswane Koka, Rambidi Koka, and he named me after his younger brother, Ratu Isireli Koka. And I never asked why I was named after him. I just know that they were Tongans, so from Taviuni. Their bloodline is from the Kokas, and I just saw a post yesterday of the descendants of the Kokas were first settled in Tonga years ago. It was Josh Koka and someone else. It's funny because my cousin too is named Joshua, who everyone knows, especially Alfred.
He settled in Rewanga.
But yeah, I'm from Mokani in Bau Televu. My mother is from some in Taviuni. I didn't grow up in the village, but I grew up in Suva. So most of my life has been, I've been surrounded by the city life. Went to school in LDS. And then I also went to Marist just for 2 years.
But a diehard Marist fan.
Yeah, I guess that's all I have about myself and my name.
I'm named after my mom's older sister, Elizabeth. I'm fully fledged. Like, I have every name of hers. Elizabeth Eve Taito. And then my dad's last name I only started carrying, I think, later on in high school. So for a huge portion of my childhood growing up, I carried the name Elizabeth Eve Taito. My namesake and my other and I, we share my great grandmother's name, who is Elizabeth O'Connor. And her middle name, Eve, her parents named her that because she was born on the eve of something significant that happened in my grandfather's policing career, I guess. And then the name Taito comes from Rotuma. And my family, my maternal family, comes from Malha'a Rotuma. My dad is from Lawaki Kandavu. And so I started carrying the name Seru, I think, at the end of high school, and then took on Vuetibau in 2018.
And I just wanted to pull on some threads over here. Isi, when you're talking about how your ancestors or your family came from Tonga, is it during the Mafu's campaign in Fiji?
In my theory, like I always think about it, I've never heard of what the true background or the story behind it. That's just my theory. And I really don't know what is behind that story. I admire everything about my mother's family because they come from a bloodline of chiefs. But then again, I also have to acknowledge where my dad is from, Mokanye. And we have great stories of the people from Makani too, which I'm also proud of. So I guess, knowing your identity really helps you, focus on what you can do, but also to acknowledge that there were people that came before you who sacrificed a lot. So,
Podcast
so
over.
just talking about no, that's a really good point. We're not going to be easy. And so just something that that Lisa had alluded to. You two got married in 2018, but how did you two meet? Right? What was the backstory behind the meet? What is the backstory behind Lisa realizing that Isi is the one for me? Isi is the one that I want to carry the Vuetimbau name. What was the story behind that? How did you two know? When did you two meet?
You want my version or his?
she should
Both
tell the
versions
story.
would be nice, yeah.
Okay. We actually grew up around each other. We were never in the same friend circles. And in 2016, I was flying for Fiji Airways at that time, and I had a cousin in Suva who was preparing to leave for BYU Provo, your wife. And so I remember I got off a flight and then I flew over to Suva, and she said, "Okay, we will come pick you." And they had a van, yeah, 7-seater van. And when I opened the door, like every seat in that van was taken except for the one beside EC. Um, and so I sat next to him, we chatted, and I was like, wow, this guy is a little different from the EC I knew growing up. He had just returned from his mission. He was a bit more mature. He looked really good. And so we sat and we visited at Vambati for a couple of hours until I had to leave again. And then it was the next day that he reached out to me and asked if it was okay if we could start chatting, start talking. So we started talking for a bit. After a couple of months, I would do the commute from Nandi to Suva just to see Isireli. So even after a long, like 8-hour flight, I would come back just to travel all the way again to Suva for another 4 hours to come and see EC. And we did that for about 2 years. 2 years before we decided we wanted to get married. Yeah, and I actually haven't changed my legal name to his. So in church, I'm known as Vuetibau. In school, amongst peers, I'm known as a Vuetibau. But on my legal documents, I have remained a Seru just because it's a bit of a hassle, trying to have to change that. And then also, something interesting was I learned in class this week, we were learning about names, where your names come from, and how back in the day, when a wife took on her husband's last name, it was like a sign of like ownership, yeah. And so I didn't want to be not that I didn't want to take on my husband's last name, but I just wanted to be known as a Seru, but also married to Isireli Vuetibau. So I just kind of wanted to keep that separate and keep that as my identity still.
And so I think you alluded to it, but Isi, how do you think, because you went on a mission, just like what Lisa said, how do you think your mission changed you? Do you think it helped you get in a position where you could marry someone? And if anything, did the mission help you become a better husband?
I guess in a way, you could say I was never the best missionary out there, Just because we are called as missionaries doesn't mean that we have everything sorted or we know everything about the gospel, about our faith. In a way, that was a way for us to also be converted to the gospel. So we had to do it whether we had to do it, we had to get up early at 6 a.m. And you live with someone else, someone from a foreign, also an international country. And you have to learn, well, I served in the Philippines, so I had to learn how to speak Tagalog. And I still speak Tagalog because there's a lot of Filipinos here in BYU, Hawaii. And so I get to practice and continue with that gift God has given me. So, I mean, all of that I was only able to attain all of that knowledge and those experiences on my mission, which I would never had the opportunity to have in Fiji, because in Fiji, before my mission, just doing there was just a lot of nonsense, There's no clear goal on what I wanted to do. I was really lost. My parents really had a hard time with me, and every other teenager goes through this, and a lot of that has to do with making choices. And I guess I chose to go on a mission because I knew it was something that I wanted. It was something I wanted to not get out of the way, but I wanted to learn something new. And becoming a missionary helped me gain a different perspective of what my life would be like if I focused. So that really helped me gain some experiences where I'm like, I need to make up my mind on what I want to achieve in life. I can't just keep making bad choices and expect something good to happen. So a lot of the things that I have been able to do today, presently, was based on what I'd learned on my mission, the experiences I had dating my wife. So if a lot of life has to do with experiences, sometimes we have bad experiences, and some we may regret, some we will be happy about. So it's how we take those experiences and um, help it guide our how or what we become in the future. So it was a good opportunity and a blessing to be able to go out there and serve those people.
Oh, nice, and I like it. And I like what you said about it's all about experiences. It's about learning from those experiences, the good and the bad. And you preaching to the choir here. I had a long time where I was also doing things in the dark and and trying to figure out my life. But I think you two already hinted to it. But you two are now in school at BYU Hawaii. But also, Lisa had also said how she was working in the airline. So could you fill us in on like the gap between the airlines and then when you two entered the BYU Hawaii?
Okay, well, so I worked for Fiji Airways for about 5 years, and then COVID hit. EC and I were married 2018. By 2020, the borders closed. Before we knew it, he was out of a job. I was out of a job. All cabin crew had been mass terminated. And so we had to make that move from Nandi to Suva. We were living in Nandi, which is about 4 hours away from Suva, yeah? For those who don't know. But we had to move all the way to Suva to live with our family so that we could have some type of support. We had just had Charlie at the end of 2019, and that was around March 2020 when we got the news that we were terminated and no longer employed by his hotel and by the airline industry. And I think that time came, that was like a shock, I guess, for me, because in my mind, like, and if COVID didn't happen, I think I would still be a cabin crew today because I was earning good money with good allowances. I had some amazing benefits working for the airline. On top of that, we had incentives, flight incentives. And so it was really a really good paying job compared to other jobs that I guess didn't need credentials or your like a bachelor's degree. And so I kind of, in my mind, I was like, okay, we're set for life. And then when COVID happened, I guess we had to do like a bit of a reset. And so the first one was moving to Suva. After we moved to Suva, we settled down and we're like, okay, well, now we need a job. So EC started working odd jobs here and there in Suva so I bought a sewing machine. I didn't know how to sew, but I learned how to sew on YouTube. And I would make little pouches and like baby inspired products and sell them. And that was how we earned money. On top of that, a cousin of mine had bought like G-slips in bulk. So we would buy off her and then sell and make commission that way. And so we were really hustling in Suva. And at the same time, we were like, we should go back to school. Like there's nothing else to do. We have Pathways, which is an opportunity to study online and gives us the opportunity to study at home, even with Charlie. And so we went back to school on Pathways. We did Pathways for about, I want to say 6 months before we applied to BYU Hawaii. And the application to BYU Hawaii was to fulfill an assignment for the Pathway education. Not realizing that we were actually like applying to BYU Hawaii, we would come across and start here afresh as a family. And so between 2020 to 2022, we just hustled. We lived with mom, who financially supported us quite a bit, and his family as well. And then we moved over here to come in school.
How was that discussion to go back to school? Because I hadn't completed my bachelor's degree at USP, and it was a big thing for me to actually think to go back because I was afraid that, that all the stereotypes. So how was that discussion? If anything, was it similar to mine, or did you have your own experiences?
I think EC can probably add on to this, but for me, when I got news that I had lost my job, EC was already unemployed at that time. But when I got news that I had lost my job and that there was a mass termination, we were on the farm with my Ava and Uncle Mo, and they played a huge role in our relationship, in our family. And so when we got that termination letter, and I was a bit shocked, I had a conversation with my namesake and my Uncle Mo, and we talked about going back to school and how that was going to happen. I wasn't so sure if I was going to do courses at USP or or applied to BYU straight away, but we had no idea. And then we moved to Suva. After we got settled, then I spoke to my mom's younger brother, who happens to be your father-in-law.
Don't
And
tell the world. I'm trying to
your favorite
keep it
father.
a secret.
And so you can edit that part out. But we had a conversation with mom's younger brother, Uncle Ned, and he talked about the Pathway program. And he talked about how it's cost efficient, it allows us to work from home or school from home. And the only requirement is that we complete all the assignments we have to do during the week and attend institute. At that time, for us to attend institute, in my mind, institute is something for the young kids, right? Those who are not married. And so the both of us going back to institute was like putting us in a class with kids who were people who are much younger than us. And then we had a crying baby in the background, and we had to turn off our camera most of the times, and we did it all virtually on Zoom. But it was quite an experience, and so I think having that conversation with Uncle Mo kind of planted that seed of the idea of going back to school, which in many ways kind of felt like a dream for us because we were older and we had a kid and we weren't quite sure how we were going to make it work, but we knew we had to go back to school. And so when we started Pathway and we did institute, that kind of opened the door for us to come here to BYU Hawaii. During our studies with Pathway, then BYU and Pathway opened up an agreement that allowed all Pathway students to have the opportunity to come and do their on-campus experience here at BYU Hawaii and kind of give them a priority, so to say. And so it just had not a coincidence, right? I think God had you could see God's hand in our preparing for school, taking Pathway, fulfilling the institute requirement, and just putting people in our path to help us be here where we are today.
I guess COVID was a real opportunity. It really had us on our feet because we lost our jobs and now we had to figure out how we will continue living. And coming from well-paid jobs and then being humbled all of a sudden really helps you realize that you may have potential, but also it's not going to be an easy fit. So, and everything just aligned, like she mentioned. BYU Hawaii had accepted Pathway students, and then that same year they had announced that you did not have to pay IWOC back for the scholarship. So it was a grant. Yeah, so they waived it becoming something that you pay back, and now it's just a grant. So all of that fell into place while we were here. I mean, when we started applying, when we got here, and we were able to come here and learn and really get out of the box. And Pathway really helped us, prepare ourselves to, okay, you're gonna go now, and you're actually gonna do. So there's no, and if you fail, there's no space for us thinking that we're gonna fail. There's no, in our minds we were like, oh, we were really sure this is what we wanted to do, so okay, let's do it. So not saying that it was really easy. It was really difficult, especially to prepare to come here, and leaving our families. Yeah, there were a lot of.
I want to just piggyback off of what he just said and add something else. And I think because we were older when we came to school, like we were 29, 28. We were older when we came to school. We had a kid. Well, we had two kids by the time we moved over here, and so we felt like, okay, now we have to work kind of twice as hard as an ordinary or normal student because we have all these responsibilities, right? And we can't afford to fail because then we'll both be going home. And so I think that has been kind of a motivating factor for me, just knowing that that God wanted us to be here and He made everything happen so that we could be here, and now it's our duty to not mess it up. So I guess you could say.
Thanks. I like that. How big a factor do you think your faith was in the journey so far since COVID and until you got to BYU? Do you think it would have been different, or do you think the process so far would have been the same even without your faith in God or a higher being?
For me, I think, well, I know we would not have achieved anything without the help of God. Literally, we knew that we could not do it alone. And a lot of our faith was, getting on our knees and praying, doing the things that we need to do as a family, not just to get to come here. But we also had to. We were also struggling in our relationship. So a lot of things that had happened, or the experiences we had during COVID and while we were coming here, really tested that faith that we had. So I don't think any of this would have been possible without us recognizing that we needed more. We actually needed help.
I think at home as well, we had the benefit of having our family around us. And so a lot of the times we relied on the help of our family, whether it was with the kids or if we needed time, to just, oh my gosh, I just need to leave the house. Like I could go leave my house or leave EC and just go and stay at my auntie's house for like a couple of hours and then come back home when I was ready. But if you have like, my cousin always told me this, but if you have like problems or issues or whatever it is at home, you come to school and it's manifested even more because you don't have that kind of a support system with you. And so being here or coming over to school really manifested where our weaknesses were as a couple, as parents, or individually even. And so we were able to kind of navigate, I guess, those rough patches. The beginning of school, we were able to find the necessary help we needed, whether it was through the counseling center, talking with our professors, and just kind of, and also, I think more importantly, was being able to rely on the help of God. I think it was after our rough patch that we kind of became more consistent with our family prayers, our family lotus, or even like being intentional about our relationship with Heavenly Father.
Yes, I like that. So you're in BYU Hawaii now because you two are in the same program. Like, who was the first one to actually want to go into the program? I think we should just pause there and then just mention that the program is
Intercultural Peace Building.
Intercultural Peace Building. So yeah, how was the discussion that you two had about intercultural peace building? Because honestly, like for me, I don't even know anything about intercultural peace building. So what was the conversation like, and who was the person that really wanted to get into the intercultural peace building program?
Well, originally I was the one that wanted to major in intercultural peace building. So when we had first applied, we had to list a major that we wanted to. Not that it would be the one, but we just had to
Options,
mention
yeah.
so they know that this is something you may want to prefer. So I actually read through it, and I was sure as soon as I read what the program was about and what they're trying to achieve, I was like, oh, this really speaks to me. And I was the one that's like, okay, I'm actually doing this. She's like, huh? Peace building? And I'm like, I need support. I don't need criticism right now. No, this is we're applying for university. So, and when that happened, I was sure this is what I wanted to do. And she majored in social work, but then eventually she realized that this is something that she also likes. So she finally became a intercultural peace building major.
Yeah, I think when we had both when we were both applying to come across, he listed peace building and I listed social work. And I had questioned and asked, like, are you sure you want to do peace building? And I asked him, you sure you don't want to do like sports science or something? Because I've never heard of peace building before. And no, it's just not a popular major. And so I knew I wanted to do social work. Then when we came over here, and I took the intro to social work and the intro to peace building class at the same time. And I feel like the peace building class resonated more with me compared to the social work one. I don't know if it had anything to do with the teaching style of the professors or what, but I felt more drawn to peace building. But then at the same time, I didn't want to change my major. because that would mean going back to the advisor and having to change that, sit down and list all my classes again with her. And then I think it was one day I had so in our program they do like guest lectures, yeah, faculty within the program. And Michael Lingalinga came over to our class one day to be a guest lecturer. And I was minoring. I had already known I was going to minor in Pacific Studies. So social work was my major. This Pacific Studies was my minor, and psychology. And peace building was going to be like my certificate. And when I spoke with him, but leading up to that point, like I was like stressing out. I know I didn't want to do social work, but I didn't want to change. Like, what do I do? And so I spoke with him, and he gave some counsel, and he talked about peace building and Pacific Studies, and continuing with Pacific Studies, but adding peace building as a major. And so I came home, I thought about it, and then I eventually changed my majors to peace building and Pacific Studies as a double major. And Michael teaches in both programs, yeah, in peace building and Pacific Studies. And so it was really helpful having to speak with him and get his insights. And then here I am. We're both double majoring in peace building.
Was there a moment, so because you said that by the time you had sent in your application for school, you already knew that you wanted to get into peace building. Was it because peace building was something that you had wanted to study from before? Is it something that subconsciously you were thinking about? Because, for example, the reason I wanted to get into business psychology is because when I was in high school, I wasn't a good leader, and I was, oh man, I want to learn how to become a good leader. So, was there something similar to that? Was there time, or are there different times or different things that led you to want to get into peace building from the get-go?
Yes, it was because I had to read what what the what the program had. So I actually did some homework and research, read what they had to offer, the classes that I needed to take, and I was like, these classes are something that I'm interested in, building peace, especially and harmony in communities. I grew up in Rewanga, so a lot of my life or the experiences that I've had, there's not a lot of peace or harmony in a suburban like Rewanga, because a lot of things are convenient in the sense of like drugs, unemployment. So one thing that I thought of when I read this was like, oh, maybe in the future, if I'm able to come back to my community, and this is something I want to work on, building peace, not just in my community, but eventually I want to go back to my village, teach the people in my village about building peace, reconciling with one another, seeing them as people and not objects, or just our relationships, a lot of peace building has to do with relationships, interpersonal relationships, and that's something I had to work on myself, with my wife, with my family, and I'm still learning today. And a lot of the learning that, or the person I am today, is based on what I learned. So if I had not learned these things, I don't think I'd probably still be the same person I was before my mission. A lot of that comes into factor: my faith, my education, my experiences as a person, and also in regards to my familial relationships, friends, people I work with. All of those relationships, you need to communicate, right? So a lot of communication may not be understood because of our cultural backgrounds. Something someone from America may say to me may be really offending, but then I need to understand that that's what he or she has grown up knowing. So I can't judge them based on what they said. Just have to be, just know that their cultures or whatever, or where they grew up, really influenced who they are and how they are in person. So this program really helped me um, change the perspective on how I see people.
So, what exactly is intercultural peace building? Is there like a definition in the Webster's dictionary, or could you to explain what intercultural peace building is? to those that don't understand or don't know what the program is?
Sure. We'll read it straight from our the catalog for our program. So it says the Intercultural Peace Building program seeks to refine and mold the divine potential of BYU Hawaii graduates to influence peace for the good at home, in the workplace, in communities, and throughout the world. It not only emphasizes theories of harmony, cross-cultural leadership, and conflict transformation, but also highlights the spiritual components of these areas, such as forgiveness and reconciliation. And we learn theories, we learn techniques on how to build and maintain relationships. We also need to recognize in relationships there are conflicts. So one thing that we study a lot in the peace building is conflicts, and how in every relationship that we have, no matter who we are, where we will always face conflict because of different understanding culture. Yeah, peace building in a nutshell is just working on relationships, maintaining them, but also understanding that you have the power to transform yourself and the people around you based on what you know, how you deal with conflict, and why it's important for you to mend those relationships so that you can have good relationships.
Lisa, did you want to share something?
No, I think he pretty much summarized it all. I think with our program, Intercultural Peace Building, a lot of people will know it as Peace and Conflict Studies. I think ours is just one of the very few universities that call it Intercultural Peace Building. And so it's basically a study of human relationships and how we can develop skills necessary to kind of de-escalate conflict, how to achieve harmony in any, whether it's an interpersonal level, community level, or at a national level, or international, between countries. And so I think Isi pretty much summarized it all.
So with that program, and I think you talked about it, with being with having a mentor like Michael Lingalinga, Dr. Michael Lingalinga, who's doing such a great work with his cultural, bringing the cultural aspects and perspectives into peace building. I follow him on LinkedIn. He's always doing a lot of great posts, and I always like to read up on it and understand like his thoughts. You guys recently had a good an opportunity to go on a trip with Dr. Lingalinga and other students. So could you just explain what the trip was before we get into like the details?
So our trip was, we were a part of, the two of us were a part of a team of about 6 students who were selected to go on this field trip to New Zealand, and just to kind of have an idea or kind of see the practical side of peace building. Because we learn a lot about theories in class, we learn about mediation, facilitating workshops to kind of achieve peace, but we don't. I think the New Zealand field trip was kind of the practical side of it, that allowed us to see what the the alternative dispute resolution space looks like in New Zealand, what mediation looks like in New Zealand, and just kind of, I guess, peace building in the New Zealand space. With our trip, a huge focus of our trip was that, but also to go and facilitate workshops with high school students in New Zealand. And there were two specific high schools that we worked with. The first one was Waitaki Boys High School, and that's in the South Island. So that's in Oamaru, which is about 2 hours away from Dunedin. And we worked with them for about 3 days. So we ran a 3-day workshop, just kind of giving them the tools that they need to learn how to be peace builders in their school, or peacemakers, or how to be mediators in their school. And then the second school was Tamaki College, which is in Auckland. Yeah, in Auckland. I think a huge portion of our workshop was just being able to, I guess, teach these students that no matter who they are, where they come from, their different backgrounds, that they each have the potential to do good and to be good. And so us teaching them mediation skills was giving them the power, or empowering them to be agents for change in their school.
The reason we thought that mediation would really help was based on there was a high suspension rate of students leaving school and not returning And a lot of that was maybe triggered from intercultural indifference or understanding, And those families that lived in Oamaru, they are from, most of them come there as workers. So there's like generations of those families from Tonga that work in the abattoir, the meat factory. And then you have the Fijians in the forest cutting and working on the pine trees, So a lot of that moving from the islands to there is a real difference in culture and lifestyles. It's really hard for students from the Pacific to move into these little towns and urban centers and not have the ability to speak English, write properly, communicate with people, and a lot of that affects how they learn in school. We were there essentially just to teach them about conflict resolutions, the outcomes or the consequences of the decisions that they would make, if they fought, if they didn't come to school. In order for us to be chosen for this trip, there were a few classes that we were required to take to be chosen to go on this trip, and we really worked hard. We had to learn a lot of things within 3 semesters, and that really helped us engage better. Because a lot of when we went there, we taught a framework that was created and designed by Dr. Michael Linglinger, Mike, and that framework speaks to culture. What we were teaching them was the VA, about relational spaces. And because he had taught it that way, it made sense to those kids, when we taught them about your identity really influences who you are, the decisions you make, what you can become, So we went there and we taught them based on our culture, and that really, I believe, had an impact on how, especially for us, because we were from Fiji and we knew
The concept of
the concept of we had experiences that may have been similar to those kids, There were 2 students that were in that workshop that just got from Tonga 2 weeks ago. So he didn't speak English really well, one of those boys. And imagine that he had to come to a school in New Zealand, and then it's hard for him to communicate. His only friend circle is the Tongan boys there. And they had to learn everything that we learned in 14 weeks in 3 days. So we really had to give it to them, We taught them exactly how Mike taught us. He also, not saying that we were the best facilitators, we also needed to be corrected at times. Well, not corrected, but he needed to add more to what we were teaching them, just to help them understand it more. And we understood that. And that was what he wanted us to experience. And that was one of my biggest takeaways was, having an experience like this it doesn't come very often, to learn something and then go out into the field and teach it in front of kids that you hope to be able to inspire. So that was one thing we wanted to share about that trip. It was a blessing, but it was also a great experience for both of us.
It was
And
really eye-opening too, yeah. Like Isi said, like the schools that were selected were the ones with the highest rates of stand down and suspension. And I think a lot of it can be because of the environment that they grew up in or the intercultural differences, whatever it is. But I think that trip really opened up our eyes to see what peace building looks like on the ground. And he talked a bit about it, but at the schools we taught them the HIVA framework, which was what Mike developed, and focused on the concept of Va, which is understood in the Tongan space and understood in the Samoan space. And though there's not a word for it in the Fijian space, we also understand the concept of Va, yeah? And just talking about how each of our relationships is sacred and important. And if we view our relationships as sacred or as important, then we'll do everything in our power to value and nurture those relationships.
nice. And I was just going to ask about what VAR meant, but I think you just summarized it. is there one thing that you would take from that trip that you would want to implement in Fiji? Because I know ECU was just talking about how it all depends on the community they were raised in, the circumstances, and it sounds similar to the experiences you had in Raiwanga in your upbringing. So, is there one thing that you got from that whole trip that you would want to implement in your community and in Fiji and in the Pacific?
Definitely. I think, like I mentioned, was something that may be very common in the Fijian species, the bearers that have been affected by conflict. And one thing I want to work on is reconciliation. A lot of the families that I grew up around, the boys that I hung out with, we all had things we were going through. And those things that we were going through, it was like we never saw it because we were always happy, we were always around each other. We never had a space. And even if we did share something, it would be seen as like, this fella's a poofta, or something like that. Club. And so our lives were driven by, we had to be tough, we have to continue the legacy of Rewanga. We're hard workers, we can play any sport, and that really clouded the choices that we wanted, or what we wanted to achieve in life, because we were living on the legacy of people who lived there before, So we thought we need to continue this, but
You think it wasn't a good one?
we didn't have a choice. That was the environment we grew up in. But we had a really good support system of people. Even though we had different faiths, we always recognized that we were all related in a way. That was one thing that I think about a lot, was the people who had migrated from the villages to come and live in Reoga. They were all far apart, but one thing that really connected us was our relationships. We recognized who we were, where our villages were, Nasemani, kind of. That is what our VA is. And because we understood that, it was easy for us to serve each other. It was easy for us to do things willingly for other people. It was easier for the boys to get together. If someone had a funeral, all the boys were there helping. And that was something I took for granted. But when I went on this trip, I really understood it. The way I treat people today will impact me maybe 10 years from now. It may not be at that same moment. As soon as I serve someone, I expect a blessing. It'll come around, and people recognize recognize the relationships and the ways we serve people.
I like that because you highlighted the relationships, and that we take it for granted in Fiji, and we take it for granted when when we're in good communities. But it's experiences that you had in on that trip helped you understand, it helped you reflect on how relationships really is the oil. It makes the engine move, and even in a community that may seem down on its luck, it's the relationships between the families, between the boys, between friends, that actually makes the community what it is. Yeah? And it's something that I think, because Fiji is, there's always division between um, races, between classes. So I think, like what you just pointed out about it being about relationships, it being about understanding that your higher purpose, or a purpose in life, is to always contribute to the community, because down the line they'll help you. That's a really good lesson to have. Eh? Lisa, did you want to share anything that's to Isi's great comment?
No, I whispered to him, he might not see the benefits of VA or maintaining that relationship with other people, but someone in his posterity will. It can be him, it can be me, it can be his children, it can be his great grandchildren. But I think, yeah, you're right. Like in Fiji, it's all about maintaining that relationship with others. Yeah, and just ensuring that we value it and we consider it worthy of being valued.
And I love that we need to start being cognizant, being aware of this concept of relationships, focusing on it, because like what you said, we may not get the benefits, or reap benefits, or get financial rewards from it, but our family down the line, our posterity, our legacy probably will. They'll probably reap the rewards of you building relationships with other families, other communities. What is one thing that you've learned that has helped you balance out the different roles that you have: a student, a family member, a mother, a father, husband, wife, but also as an employee, because you're also working in Hawaii. So is there one thing from each of you that you could share with everyone else that is probably going through the same thing as you?
Thing that we teach the kids is about the HIVA model is boundaries. Boundaries are really important because boundaries. Oh wait, I think it's the second one.
No, that's the first one.
Okay, yeah. So it's the first one. We teach them that when we have boundaries, we let people know that this is as far as I can go, or this is what I prefer, and this is something that we don't talk a lot about in our culture. That because people like she's a girl and I'm a boy, I cannot treat her the same way I treat my friends, the boys that I hang out with. I need to be more respectful towards her. There are certain things that I may do with my friends I cannot do around her, like speaking, joking around as we do as gentlemen, playing around the way we do. That goes into the second thing where we negotiate spaces. Once we know our boundaries, we can negotiate the spaces that we are in. So people will know as soon as I come in, oh, this fella doesn't like this, and that. So, and I respect that. And because I know that, I will not be a certain way towards them. I will not speak a certain way. I may have my own, my opinions and stuff, but I should not let that affect our relationship and the boundaries uh, that they have. So those two things really speak to me a lot about having our own boundaries and allowing people to know them, and then being able to negotiate the spaces that we are around and how we can help people understand that we are who we are because of a certain idea that we have, and we can still joke around and hang out and still love one another, but we can still have different ideas and opinions of things.
I think so. With the HIVA framework, there was like 9 levels that made up the framework. He spoke about 2 of them: boundaries and negotiating spaces. One that I was more drawn to was connection. And when we talk about connection with these students, we show them a picture of Japanese pottery. Have you heard of kintsugi? So we show them
No.
a picture of kintsugi pottery, and it's basically like, and it looks like broken pieces put back together again. And what makes this pottery whole after it's been broken is there's gold dust and clay that's mixed together to fit these pieces back together. And when we teach this to the students, we talk about how we're celebrating the imperfections, right? And so we don't just check out the broken bowl and go to Walmart and purchase another bowl. We put it back together and we celebrate the imperfections. And so when we teach this to the kids, or when we taught it to the kids in New Zealand, we told them that we each come with different experiences. We each come from different backgrounds and different cultures. The way we develop, development wise, we don't all develop the same way. We all have different things to bring to the table, and a part of peace building, or a huge part of peace building, is understanding that we can celebrate those imperfections. We can celebrate whatever weaknesses we have, if we all come together to learn how to work together. There's another level of HIVA that talks about harmony, which is kind of the desired level. If we maintain boundaries, if we keep our boundaries, if we're able to negotiate spaces, if we're able to foster the connection, what are the other ones? If we are able to maintain our relationships with others, we're able to reach harmony, which is, and we use the analogy of a choir singing together. If you have someone singing soprano only, it won't sound as good. It sounds good, but it won't sound as good if you had someone who sings alto or bass and tenor join with you, right? And so everyone shares the same goal, to kind of achieve peace, to achieve harmony, to be able to de-escalate conflict. We should all be on the same page. If we understand that we are all from different backgrounds, that we all have boundaries, and that conflict only occurs when we cross those boundaries, when we don't know how to negotiate spaces, when we don't know how to celebrate the imperfections. And so I think that was what resonated with me more.
And I really love what both of you talked about, and it's really beautiful because those are things that it can work in your homes, relationships, as a husband and wife. Things that you could also teach your children, discussing your limitations, trying to find synergy, like trying to find a connection between my children because they're all different and myself. But it's interesting that all those different things can work in the familial space, but it can also work in society. It's something that if Fiji were to embrace, understanding the boundaries, understanding how trying to set boundaries and trying to negotiate your space, and people understanding that opinions, that those are personal opinions, but also the connections that we should also celebrate our differences. We could build a way better society. So we'll just start to slowly wind down this conversation, this talma, this chat. Is the first one is, how do you want your children to remember you?
When I hear the word legacy, I think of something so extravagant. It has to be, I have to achieve something out of this world, but to be able to be remembered for something. But um, one thing that I want to focus on a lot, especially now as a student, was to my relationship with my wife and my boys, because I live with them every day. We have conflicts every other hour of the day. We go through something. We need to learn to maintain those relationships. And one thing I want my boys to remember about me was that I love them, and that's something I really want to work on and help develop. It won't be easy, and I recognize that, but I also know it will be worth it. So, spending time with them, even though I'm busy with work and school, helping them remember me by, oh, dad was always there. I can do whatever. I can turn to dad when I'm in need. So that's something that I hope to leave behind.
I think for me, so when we first came over here for school, we were just so focused on school. Like we didn't have enough time to be with our children. So we'd bring school home, we'd bring work home. And growing up, I never really saw myself as, like, I never thought that academics was kind of my strong suit. And so coming to school was like a huge deal, a huge deal for me. And even as a parent, even. And so I always wanted to make sure that I'm working hard so that I can have good grades, so that I can pass my classes, and so that I can get a degree. But all of that will mean nothing if I don't spend, time here at home with my kids. Even like these 4 years while we're here in school, these are 4 years not just for him and I to be in school, but these are 4 years of our children's lives as well. And they're going through it just as much as we are. And so, if there's one thing that I want, if there's a legacy that I want to leave behind for my children, it's that I was present, even when I had 100 other things to do. That was probably more pressing. Whether it was assignments that need to be submitted, exams to go and sit, or group discussions to go and have. I want them to know that even if mom was in school, she was still present there, for us.
And I like how you two talked about like like what Isi had said. Like when we think about legacy, we try and think about trying to build big businesses or trying to get all these different achievements. I do that sometimes when I want to leave a legacy where those big things, because I want my children to to see that and aspire to it. But it's really beautiful that you two talk about, like Isi said, the biggest legacy that he wants to leave for his children is for them to know that he was there. The relationships that he had with his children, his two boys, ahead of anything else. And then, like what Lisa said, every time we make decisions, I'm guilty of that sometimes. We can try and achieve all of these different things, but if it comes in the way of our relationship with our children, then we've lost everything that we've built there. So the last question that I wanted to ask, it may sound similar, but I'm trying to really understand or get behind the psychology of what will drive you after school. Yeah, and the question is, what would be one achievement that if you were on your deathbed that you had made or you had completed that achievement that will make you smile and know that you've had a complete life?
I can go first. Something that Isi and I have been talking about it, but something that we want to do when we are done with school is hopefully pursue further education so that we can be in a position to set up the first ADR consultancy in Fiji, which at the moment there's none. And so we want to be the first Pasifika people to be able to do that in our home country. That would make me smile on my deathbed, knowing that that's the legacy, another legacy I leave behind for my children and for our family.
For me, I think it's really simple. I just want to be able to graduate from here. That would really mean a lot to me.
Oh, and I love it. And I love the goals that you two have for, individual goals and the shared goals that you two have. I can relate to Isi, my family. I am the first person to graduate from college from my immediate family. Something that I'm really proud of. Even though I didn't get to celebrate it with my parents because I'm up here, but also having that shared goal of trying to create the first ADR consultancy in Fiji, and hopefully can also help the Pacific with your consultancy. That's a really good goal that I personally would like to encourage you to try and do, because we all know that we need more help in trying to create more better relationships within families, within communities in Fiji and the Pacific. So yeah, thank you so much for accepting the invitation that I extended. I know you two are pretty busy. We've been trying to sync calendars for a while now. I think I should have gone with in contact with Easy first, because Lisa seems to be topsy-turvy with schedules and things like that. But yeah, thank you so much for everything that you shared. Thank you so much for your stories, the lessons that you've taught us, aspirations that you shared with us, which I know is pretty, some personal aspirations and visions that you do have. But yeah, is there any last words that you want to say before we end this podcast, this episode?
I guess we would like to thank you for giving us this platform to share our story. Not that it's unique or anything, but giving us this opportunity really um, helps us grow, but also help people recognize that we are also Fijians that are out here trying to do something good. At the end of the day, it's all for Fiji, Nanomi Viti, Nanomi Bao. But yeah, thank you for giving us this opportunity. But we'd also like to recognize our families in Fiji, here in Hawaii, and all over the world. Our mentors here in BYU Hawaii, the teachers that give us the opportunity to be who God wants us to be. And we'd also like to recognize and thank God for continuing to bless and help our family through this journey. Thank you.